It is the long weekend upon us coming up, which signifies, that unofficial end of summer. I know, don't get mad at me. I can't control the calendar. But with summer winding down and cell phone bans coming into effect as kids go back to school, it might be a good time to introduce your kids to a good book, maybe help distract them, maybe even spark a passion for reading. CBC Books just posted 15 books, by Canadian authors and illustrators that can help kids and teens really ease back into books, especially if they had those tucked away over the summer holidays. So today on our calling conversation, we want to find out from you, what books sparked your love of reading as a child or even as an adult? What books do you love reading to your kids and why? Maybe we can get some recommendations out here for our listeners. And joining us is Bridget Raimundo. She's an associate producer with CBC Books and helped curate the list. Hi, Bridget. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So I want to give people just this number. If you have a book that you want to recommend or tell us why it's your favorite, you can text 204-588-7355 or give us a call because we always love to hear your voices, 204-780-0893. So Bridget, first off, how did your team go about selecting these books? Because, oh my goodness, there are so many.
Yeah. So we took a look at the kind of recent releases that have come out this year and noticed that a lot of them talk about this anxiety of going back to school. So it's not just about like getting back into reading. It's also about how do I be myself in a new school year. And so that's how we kind of curated this, starting with picture books and going all the way to books for teens.
See, that is always one of my favorite gifts for a baby shower is to bring one of my favorite books, Where the Wild Things Are, when you bring those in and you get to, write a little note to baby and help curate their library before they can even read. So, there's so many. So why did these particular books, because I just go back to my favorites.
Yeah.
Why did these ones stand out to you and your team?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that that's become a trend. I used to work at a children's bookstore, and that was like the common occurrence of bring a book instead of a card to a baby shower. I love it. And I remember every time someone would come in, my tactic was Where the Wild Things is amazing.
Yes.
No hate to Where the Wild Things. But if everyone loves Where the Wild Things, there's a greater chance that you're going to end up having duplicates.
For sure.
At this baby shower. So that's why we kind of tried to gear it towards some of these newer releases, things that people have not heard about, also by Canadian authors. I think that's always a great way to mention. This is by a Canadian author. These are books that kids can also like grow into later on. Yeah.
I love that because that's also been my go-to gift for all of my nephews. I get them curated to their names because you can get those ones done as well. Super cool. Yeah. So many great ideas. So we have so many books to get to, but let's start with one about summer camp. So what's your pick?
One about summer camp. Well, I really love... it's a little different. It's The Kodiaks, which is by David A. Robertson. And this, it's less of a summer camp, more of a new hockey team.
Okay.
And this one is, so David A. Robertson, who is, I think, a national treasure at this point, a wonderful middle grade author. And it's about this kid who's moving with his family after his dad gets a new job. He doesn't want to move away from his Indigenous community because that's where he feels at home and comforted. But he really loves hockey. He joins this new team and has to navigate what it means to be Indigenous in this new space, what other kids think of him when they've not been introduced to an Indigenous kid before. And it's really just a lovely story about teamwork and camaraderie that I would say has like those summer camp vibes, even if it's not specifically at summer camp. I don't actually know if there's one on this list out of summer.
We'll just throw it out there. Why not? But, I also love when you talk about, we're bringing in different cultures, we're bringing in diversity, and it's something that books, a few decades ago, we didn't really have a lot of that on the shelves when we were talking about inclusion, equity, diversity, to be speaking with our kids about. And it's something that is so important. And are you seeing so much more of that now?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say one of the wonderful books on this list as well is Today is Orange Shirt Day by the creator of Orange Shirt Day, Phyllis Webstad. And that's a board book. And so that's really touching to see books for like 0 to 3, where they're really formative. It's a few words, it's simple pictures, but it's introducing even the littlest of people to different cultures and communities that they are a part of or they might be about to see in the world. Also with chapter books, there's a great chapter book on this list called Alina in a Pinch, which is about a young girl who gets insecure about bringing her cultural dishes to lunch in the lunchroom. And that's something I relate to as a multiracial person, feeling insecure about, if my food would smell, if people would comment on it. And it's just a really wonderful point of reference for kids who are inevitably going to experience those things, unfortunately, in their school classroom, to be like, hey, this is someone who has been through it, similar experiences, and I can relate to it in my fiction.
Yeah, some of these kids' books are really an incredible way to talk to littles about really difficult topics that we think, oh, they're too small. We can't talk to them about that yet. And we can. We just need to do it in an age-appropriate way. We want to hear from you guys, our listeners. What kids' books stood out to you as a kid? What are you reading right now with your kids or your adolescents? What are they reading? Give us a call, 204-780-0893. You can text us as well, 204-588-7355. I was just on holidays visiting with my nephews in BC, and one of my nephews can't put down the Dogman books. He loves those. Right? I think every parent of, that 8, 9, 10-year-old can understand that one right now. So we keep hearing about those. And I love that we've gotten all of them into reading at that early age. Bridget, do you have a favorite when you were a kid?
My go-to is always, I loved Captain Underpants, which is also the same author as Dogman. So Dave Pilkey has just had a long trajectory. I love The Babysitter's Club.
Oh my God, I wrote that down. That was one of mine too.
I loved it. It's so good. And they have graphic novel versions now, which is awesome. And yeah, I loved any of the Geronimo Stilton, things like that. It really, there's those very nostalgic ones that I've never grown out of reading kids' books, even though I'm an adult now. Even picture books, I think the art in them is so beautiful. So I always go back to it. And I think it's always really important to engage with your visual literacy as well as your reading literacy.
I know. See, I always volunteer to do bedtime when I go home for my sister, and which she loves, because I love reading the books with them, and I get to bring some of the Manitoba ones back with me. Babysitter's Club was one that I wrote down. I also loved the Goosebumps series, and anything that was like that choose your own adventure. I think those are super cool for kids now as well, where you can read it 100 times and it's different every single time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So sorry, continue.
Go ahead. Oh yeah. I think we need more of those choose your adventure. I haven't seen a good one recently.
It's been a while. I think I may be dating myself here. I'm aging myself a little bit by saying that because it's been a while. Some of the most classic children's stories that we see and have read time and time again, of course, are fairy tales. So do you have any books for fairy tale lovers out there?
There's one book, again by a Manitoban illustrator, which is awesome, Rael McGregor. It's called Mortified. And I think it's definitely that middle ground. It's a middle grade book, but it starts each chapter with a comic illustration. So if you have kids that are lovers of graphic novels and you're wanting to ease them into chapter books a little bit more, this is a great place to start. But it's basically about this kid whose best friend thinks she's a witch. And so it's kind of like a contemporary fairy tale, I would say. Like she signs her friend up unbeknownst to her to an audition. She's so nervous about it. And all of these sequence of events happens after the fact because her friend has these magical powers that she wasn't aware of. So I really like those modern takes on fantasy elements. There's a YA book on here as well called Curious Tides. That's kind of like that magical fantasy high school experience. And that's always really fun.
I feel like we kind of go through waves with what's hot and what's not, right? Like there was a big time through Harry Potter and all of those, and then we had the big time where it was vampires, and we seem to go through phases. I see you're laughing at me.
No, I'm laughing with you because I was part of that vampire phase. Right? Absolutely. That was very formative.
Right? It really made us who we are here. So let's get back to some of these books. And again, give us a call if you've got one of those books, because we've already said ours. Babysitter's Club, Goosebumps. If you're an adult, what were those ones that you loved reading? Is there a new one that you found that you're reading with your kids? 204-780-0893. Bridget, are there any books on the list for fans of nonfiction?
I would say I would go back to This Orange Shirt Day. I think that's definitely one where I guess it's not technically nonfiction, but it leads you to more nonfiction, to learning about the importance of Orange Shirt Day and the importance of Indigenous communities. There's also, I would say, Call Me Al by Wally Shaw and Eric Walters. That's based on Wally Shaw's experience growing up as a Pakistani immigrant in Canada. And that one, again, tackles some very difficult topics about experiencing racism, experiencing ostracism as a young kid, but for young readers in a way that they can relate to. And I think parents can read along as well and find ways to talk about difficult things.
Yeah, and I was going to point that out. This really is a way for parents who maybe don't know how to have those conversations or where to start those conversations, to be reading these books. And kids, they're naturally curious, are going to start asking those questions. So you don't even need to be approaching it as the parent. You can kind of read the book and have them ask those questions to get into some of those really difficult conversations and topics.
Yeah, and read it with them, like make it a collaborative experience too. I always think that's really sweet to see, because then you could have questions as a parent and you could have things that you want to get your kid's perspective on as well.
Well, I think when we're talking about Orange Shirt Day, that's something that a lot of people, we've opened that conversation up about residential schools and, indigeneity over the years. And it really gives people that area to explore with their kids, and as adults that maybe some of us need to explore a little bit more. So any other books that you want to mention that are kind of those hidden gems that you see?
Yeah, I would say if any little kids are nervous about going to school, there's two books on here, I Am Cherished by Nomi Ako and The Only Lonely Fairy by Lana Button and Peggy Collins. And these are both about, I think, kids who just want to have community, to find a friend, to wander and adventure and play pretend at recess, play fairies with The Only Lonely Fairy. And they're both really lovely stories about finding those connections in your first couple of days of school. So if there's any nervousness, if there's any anxiety, those are two that I would definitely recommend reading with your kids before they start the new school year.
Bridget, how hard is it to really whittle down this list? I mean, there are so many books out there. There are so many authors. Where do you go?
Yeah, well, we're very fortunate that a lot of the authors and publishers come to us and tell us about their books. So it makes it a lot easier that way. And also that we get to curate lists like this all year round. So we've got a bunch of different fall previews coming out this starting as of 2 weeks ago in all different genres. And it's a really wonderful opportunity to talk about the new and emerging authors. I'm always just checking and finding authors through other authors. There is a really warm sense of camaraderie, I think, particularly between Canadian children's authors and picture book illustrators in Canada, which is awesome to see.
So many great ones. I want to go. We've got Liz on the line here. Liz, welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, hi, fine. It's a long time since I've read this book, and I don't remember the author, but the book is called Animals of Farthing Woods, and it's about animals. It's a chapter book, and it's good for really a variety of ages, and animals' habitat is being disrupted with construction and what have you, and they have to leave that area and cross a highway, and so the animals talk to each other and devise a plan and who will need help and who won't, and of course some don't unfortunately make it across the highway, but the majority do, and who's going to be the leader and all of that. It's just the most wonderful book. The kids want, when I used to read it to them, would want it over and over again. So that's my little 2 cents worth.
Liz, it sounds like a really timely book. And is this one that you read to your kids, or were you a teacher?
Oh, yes, and I'm talking 50 years.
Yeah. A little while ago.
Yes, but I'm sure it's still available, and certainly a child of even 4 years old, like grade 2, would like it. 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6, because they remember it, and they would all snuggle up beside me, and a whole bunch of them.
Did it help open up some of those conversations with your kids?
Oh, yes, and they identified with the animals and the stress they were facing, and, all that kind of stuff. It was just a lovely storybook.
I love that. Thank you, Liz. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Bye.
And our producer extraordinaires have double-checked that is available online. You can get that one on Amazon. So a nice little plug there, or possibly one of your local bookstores as well. Bridget, any more last-minute tidbits that you want to call out there of something as we head back into the school year, of somebody maybe if they've got a little who doesn't love to read, maybe there's something that gets them in there?
Yeah, I always say and encourage reading graphic novels. I think it's a great way for little ones to get into reading, especially if they're moving from chapter books to sort of middle grade books, where it can be really intimidating to start with a 200-page book when you're reading these short little series. So there's a great book called The New Girl by Cassandra Kalin, which is about a girl in grade 7 who's just immigrated to Montreal. And she gets her period for the first time, and it's a whole thing, as it always is. And I deeply related to the story, but it's so sweet the way that she kind of has new friends gather around her. Her family supports her. I really wish I had a book like that growing up, actually, to just empathize with that experience. Right. And
real life. So
it happens.
It happens.
So anything like that, and told in the graphic novel form, it's a great way to get into reading, I think, if you're hesitant about it. And I still go back to it when I'm having trouble reading things that are a bit denser. I go back to read words with pictures and read children's books.
Just gives us a little break.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bridget, so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bridget Raimondo is a producer at CBC Books. Visit cbcbooks.ca for all those great summer reads and more.
Thank you for watching the CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. For the latest breaking news and top stories, download the CBC News app.